Hi guys, Les from Future FX here. I wanted to take you through a new bit of a feature that I'm adding to Cost Averager. Alrighty, so everything else is still the same. Sorry, this is just left over from where I had Trend Trader on. Okay, so this is just all Cost Averager, the usual buy thing there, and we have the target. But what I've added here is an ADR calculation. So ADR is average daily range, and you can set for how many days. So the average daily range, so the range between the highest it's reached and the lowest it's ever reached, I mean, the daily range between the highest every day and the lowest every day, that range has averaged on pound yen, has averaged 144 pips over the last 14 days. The highest that it's reached, the highest daily range over those 14 days has been 207 pips. And so far today, the range has been 31 pips. In the settings, we can change the number of days just here. So if we wanted to change that to something much larger, see the average over a longer period of time, just wait for it to update. Now we can see that the average daily range isn't much different. It's 153 pips, but the highest, there was one day with a hell of a lot more movement. All right, so these calculations don't do anything yet except be useful information for you. There's a number of ways you can just use them by having that, is to know that your settings should definitely be able to handle the average daily range. If your settings can't handle 153 pips on pound yen, then you're trading too aggressively. Now mind you, you can trade aggressively as long as you're not trading the London New York session, because most of this movement generally will be during the London New York session. So if you only trade the Asian session, then you can trade more aggressively. But I would say, as a general rule, make sure your settings can handle the average daily range movement. But keep in mind that there are just the odd days when you will get much larger movement. Like, so in the last 14 days, there hasn't been any more than that. But there was one day in the last 30 days, which was, almost three times that amount. So you just got to avoid getting caught in those really big movements. Now, mind you could get, so these really big movements don't occur often. And probably the majority of the time, they will occur with the trend. So you will probably catch that and make a lot of profit. Most of the time when this big movement goes against the trends is going to be directly after some sort of a very volatile news event. But yeah, just useful information. Let's go, for example, on pound yen, I'm using a gap. Oh, this is also what I've changed. The input trade gap is now in points. So before on pound yen, we're putting in 0.2 because it was just a dollar value. I've changed that to points now because I think that's much more familiar to everybody. So I'm using 150 points, so 15 pips as my trade gap. And that gives us, that's based off, that's on pound yen. That has the average daily range of 153. Let's have a look at a different pair. So now we're looking at AUD CHF. The average daily range here is only 52 pips. So the average, and this is over the last 28 days, so the average, I'll make it 30, the same as what we had on pound yen. 30. So this is just a very, very quick and easy way for you to see what the market has been doing. So the highest has only been 102. On pound yen, it was 470, and the average has only been 51, whereas on pound yen, it was 153. So obviously, a much less volatile pair than pound yen, and you'll see that reflected in my settings. I'm only using an input trade gap of 100 points. I'm doing 100, probably could use less than that as well. So that's that little bit of a calculation there can give you a very good idea of, the sort of trade gap you should be using. Another useful information you can pull from this is today. So we know that on average, the market moves 51 pips. It's only moved 13, 14 so far today. So there's a lot more movement yet to go. So, you can sort of almost count on getting at least another, another sort of 30 pips of movement at least out of this pair today, one way or the other. Generally, it'll be with the trend. And just bear with me and I'll show you one more little thing. Okay, so I've got this little calculator here to help you work out your risk when using cost averager. So you got to put your inputs in here, your account balance, how many pairs you're trading, your broker leverage. That's important to have that in there. The lot size you're using. And these are the settings that I'm using on AUD CHF at the moment. I'll put, and these are in pips, not points. So on pound yen, I'm using a 15 point or 150 points, 15 pip trade gap. And I've just got the max trades at 12 and let that calculate out. And it's going to tell you the first trade, the second trade will be 15 pips away from that. And the third trade, will be another 17 pips gap between those two, 19 pip gap, 21 pip gap. So this calculator only works when you have the start level for the multiplier at just at 1. I haven't put in a calculation here yet to allow that to change. So the trade gap multiplier is going to increase the gap between the trades by 1.1 every trade. And so then you've got the total pips of movement. So if you've got level 6, so you've actually got 7 trades open on those settings, the market will have gone against you by 120 pips. Now remember, pound yen had a average daily range of 150. So let's go down here. If we had 8 trades open, we'd have incurred about that. And so if I had, like, the average daily range is 150 pips. If I happen to have that 150 pips go completely against me, which would mean I'd have to get in right at the very top of the market that day and, then get 150 pips of movement against me, which is the average daily range, which is quite rare to happen. But I would incur a drawdown of 6.5% if that did occur. So we're sort of almost looking at worst case scenario there. That's what we're likely to get. If you're working a prop firm and you need to keep your drawdown under 5%, then, you're going to be wanting to look at changing, your lot size down to something smaller. And then in this case, if we had that 150 pips against us, we'd only be in 3.26% drawdown. So this calculator's not quite complete, not quite perfect yet, but gives you, quite an accurate understanding of how much drawdown is potentially going to occur based off your settings. All right, guys, that's pretty much all I've got for you today. That should all help things run more smoothly and give you a better understanding of it. Make sure you got the right settings. But cost average is just killing it. I think Well, I think it's going to become everyone's favourite future FX software for sure.